Lees-Galloway.
Mr. Speaker, a few minutes ago, Joe Goodhue was scrounging around for some positive comments about the budget, from some community organisations. She found a good one. She thought it was from a union, no less. It was from the New Zealand Nurses Organisation, congratulating the government for making a tough call to cancel tax cuts planned for next year, etc., etc. And she crowed about the fact that the Nurses Organisation were congratulating the government on making that call. Well, too right, the government had to make that call. That's why when the tax cuts were being brought in under urgency before Christmas, Labor opposed them because we knew then that they weren't affordable. The government knew then that they weren't affordable, but they went ahead with them anyway. It was all part of their smoke and mirrors. Look at us, we're doing what we promised. Just wait though till the 100 days of action are over. Just wait till what might come further down the road. But it's all well and good quoting the Nurses Organisation, but she only got to the first line. And actually, you would have thought she might have dug a little bit further. The headline might have just given it away. Budget 2009, tough calls, some good, some bad. Now, there was some more good stuff in there. NZ welcomes the protected increases in health. Thank you very much, NZ for welcoming the maintenance of a Labor Party policy. I mean, the government painted this budget in such a bad light that the fact that they actually managed to simply maintain a Labor policy was the community was throwing their arms up. Hallelujah, they said. They haven't started cuts on that bit anyway. But then we get into it, and this is where NZ says NZ assesses the budget most for its likely impact on jobs. And they go on to say NZ is very concerned that the large cuts announced in government department spending will drive a continuing hemorrhage of jobs. If work being done is no longer deemed to be required, there are plenty of new challenges these skilled workers would be better applied to than throwing them on the dole. We remain deeply concerned about the funding for residential aged care. We are also unclear about how the funding will be distributed and calculated. Some good and some bad.
Joe Goodhue didn't read that out.
That's right. No, she completely missed that bit. Didn't get past the first line. Some good and some bad. But actually, it was about time NZ offered a fairly favourable press release for the government, because just a few days before, NZ expects Thursday's budget will focus on strengthening the economy and hopes it will do so through a focus on jobs. Well, wasn't everybody hoping there would be a focus on jobs? But it was completely lacking. It was completely missing. That came after the press release just a few days before that. Nurses disappointed by government's disregard for fairness. And this had to do with the scrapping of the Pay and Employment Equity Unit, which the Nurses Organisation had worked very closely with the previous government on, and it achieved some very useful, very beneficial, tangible results. Mr. Speaker, it's bad enough that this budget is the budget of broken promises. It's bad enough that John Key and Bill English told New Zealanders that they could have their cake and eat it too. It's bad enough that John Key and Bill English said that there would be tax cuts. There'd be tax cuts this year, there'd be tax cuts next year, and there'd be tax cuts the year after. It's bad enough that John Key went out and told Kiwis that National wouldn't tamper with the super scheme. It was his personal commitment that there would be no tampering with the super scheme. It's bad enough that Bill English has committed intergenerational theft by his gutting of KiwiSaver and his ruining of the super scheme by getting rid of the payments to the fund formerly known as Cullen. But I tell you what's really deplorable about this budget, Mr. Speaker, and that is the fact that it is completely devoid of any kind of vision for New Zealand. That is the worst kind of intergenerational theft. It's anti-aspiration. It's riddled with short-term expedient thinking, written by a minister who seems frankly unnaturally comfortable with the idea that he will not be held accountable for its real effects on future generations of New Zealanders, not while he holds a ministerial warrant anyway. But there are people out there who do have a vision. In my home electorate of Palmerston North, there are people who have a very strong vision of where they would like New Zealand to go. They want to be a world leader in food technology and innovation that brings together private sector research, state-funded research, and academic food science experts from across the world. They want to be a magnet for economic development in this country. Those people have a vision of New Zealand that's high skill and is a high wage economy. And they have a vision that science, research and technology can be the driving force not only of New Zealand's recovery from this recession, but of a sustained and genuine, sustainable improvement in living conditions for all New Zealanders. And all they ask, Mr. Speaker, is that they be taken seriously. But this government, in this budget, has shown that it does not take science, research and technology seriously. It would like you to think so, but the truth is, research, science and technology has been one of the very big losers in this budget, with small increases in some areas, to be fair, but offset by massive funding cuts across the board. The government claims that this budget recognises the critical role science and technology play in the economic recovery through substantial additional funding. At best, Mr. Speaker, that is misleading. At worst, and it's a theme of this budget, it's just plain dishonest. While the RS&T Minister has trumpeted small increases in some areas, the real story is cuts in tertiary education, the abolition of Labour's R&D tax credits, the gutting of the Fast Forward Fund, and the smallest increase in Vote RS&T in years. The Minister claims substantial extra funding of $128 million, but in fact, the Vote RS&T funding has increased by only $25 million. That was paid for by slashing $630 million from the sector, by abolishing Labour's R&D tax credits. The government has stripped more than $600 million in funding from the sector, and it has the gall to call it an increase. This doesn't even take into account the cuts to Labour's Fast Forward Fund. In February, National promised that National's replacement for the Fast Forward Fund would be equal to or better than Labour's. But the fund unveiled by National is not only worth $800 million less to the sector, but it also lacks one of the most critical aspects of Labour's fund, and that was long-term certainty of funding. Labour's Fast Forward Fund guaranteed stable research funding for the food and pastoral sectors for the next 10 to 15 years. Under National's poor imitation, this critical sector will have to queue up, cap in hand, year after year to get its funding. That's not good enough, and that shows no vision whatsoever for a country that is a high-wage, high-earner, high-living standard economy.
No ambition.
What this country needs, Mr. Speaker, is jobs. And as the nurses' organisation pointed out, it needs good quality jobs. And the RS&T sector has delivered to potential good quality jobs. When we develop new technologies, we shouldn't simply try to sell them off overseas. We as a nation should be trying to get in behind the people who develop new technology to keep any manufacturing that comes out of that here in New Zealand. We can't compete with China on quantity, but we can compete on quality. And it's from focusing on quality that supports a high-wage economy. We need to support start-up companies so that new technology can be the harbinger of manufacturing opportunities. It's called the Valley of Death. That's the period between the development of a new technology and taking it out to commercialisation. Where is support in this budget for people who have created a new technology, who want to take it out and commercialise it for the benefit of all Kiwis? There's no support in here whatsoever. There is no vision. When the economy inevitably turns around, New Zealand needs to be ready. We need new technologies, new products, and people with the skills to produce them. But there is no vision, and we will be left behind. Universities and polytechs have, in real terms, from this budget, received a funding cut. And yet they're experiencing massive growth at the moment as people who rather than lining up on the dole queue, want to get themselves into tertiary education to get those skills to make them ready for the time when New Zealand is back on its feet and able to drive forward and drive its economy forward. This government works on the basis of false dichotomies. It's saying on one hand, there's no room for RS&T to develop the environment.
I'm sorry, the member's time has expired.
It's so.
I call the Honourable Anne Tolley.